Hey guys, it's Dan and welcome to another video. In this one I'm going to show you how you can make a cool timer for your game. We're going to continue with our VR escape room game. Now in the last one we made a keypad that you could use to enter a code to do something like open a door, or in this case defuse a bomb. But at the moment our game doesn't actually currently have really a start or an end, and for this particular game our game loop is going to be driven by the bomb timer on the front of this device here. It's going to be a clock counting down so that when it reaches 0 it's game over. So with this one we're going to be utilizing a few things. For this I do have the keypad we made from a previous tutorial from the last episode, which I'll show you how to put all that together using the XR interaction toolkit. And this is a free 3D model I've got here. You don't actually need any of this to follow along with this tutorial. You could, if you just want a cool timer for your game that displays in minutes and seconds, you could just follow along with the video and take the bits of it that are useful to you. So let's dive right in and have a look and see what we're going to be building. Okay, so here we are in VR. Oh my god, I've only got 15 seconds. You enter your code, blah, 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 and you might get it right or wrong. Oh no, access denied. I've got 8 seconds left. Crap. 4, 5, 2, 3. And you can see it's going down and it reaches 0. And then you get exploded. Hopefully you can see that. I might have to do it again. So let me show you. We'll give myself a bit more time. Let's put in 100 seconds for a minute, so I can show you what's going on. So the game automatically starts. It just throws you right in there. Got no real intro at the moment. So now you can see I've got 1 minute 34, 32, 31, and if what the idea is that you'd be teleporting around the lab and trying to find the clues to enable you to enter the code to defuse the bomb. So once I've got that code, I would enter 1, 2, 3. Oh, wrong. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's correct, and I've disarmed. Then it would be giving me the game over message. So there we go. That's what we're going to be making. So I would like to give a big thank you to the following people: Ruud van Reenen, Wanglan Nguyen, John K, Hassan Karuni, Pablo Rivero, Geronimo Morales, Stanton Nash, Jacater, Marvin Church, Peter, Bonfyong Choi, Javon Poulter, VR Animated, Eli L, Exodus, and Harold Gunderson. Thank you so much for your continued support. It really does mean a lot and makes the world of difference when it comes to making these videos. So thank you very much to you guys. You're all awesome. Now let's get stuck in. You can get all the artwork from Patreon if you're a Patreon follower, or you could use your own artwork. I actually got this model, this is a Sketchfab model. I put the link in the description, so thanks to the dude that made that. So what we'll do, we'll start a new fresh scene and go from this timer from scratch. So we'll break this down into a couple of sections. I think the first section, let's have a look at creating our timer. And then if that's all you want to know, this is how you create a cool timer, whether it be VR or otherwise. If you want to know more about how to hook it up to like an actual game mechanic, then follow along with the rest of the tutorial. So let's have a look at starting our timer. First thing we're going to need is, I've got some artwork here that I'm going to use. So I'm going to bring that into the scene. I'm going to drop it straight into the hierarchy. And we're getting kind of bored of it on this tank. Let's move it somewhere else. Why don't we, let's go and put it on this blue fridge thing. Let's stick it to the door. Okay, roughly happy with that. Okay, so as you can see here, that it's like this artwork's already got a pre-made section for us that we can use to display our timer. So we'll go ahead and utilize that. And to do so, we're going to need a canvas. So we're going to right click. We're going to create a UI canvas. And with it selected in the inspector, we'll go ahead and change it to a world space canvas and give it a tiny width. Let's say we want it like 0.25 by 0.08 or something like that. And then we're going to need to move this into position. So let's find it in our scene. Where has it gone? It's miles away. We'll center it back at 0. There we go. And to speed up getting it near to our bomb, what we'll do is we'll drag it into our bomb and we'll reset the position and double click it. It should take us where we need to be. Looks like I've made it too teeny weeny. Where is it? That's helpful. I'm sure it normally had like the bounds around it. Oh, there we go. Oh, it's still massive. That's okay. So holding down W to move it into position, which is going to be really tricky when I can't see where the frame is. If that's a bug. Thanks, Unity. Right, so I'm roughly moved it into position. Then I'm going to use the rect tool to just get it the right size. I'm making my canvas the same size as the LCD panel on my artwork. Cool, and I'm going to go ahead and drop UI Text Mesh Pro in there. I'm going to highlight this rect transform, hold Shift and Alt and click on the box to stretch it to the extent of the canvas. I'm going to drop the font size down to 0.1, maybe even smaller. Let's try 0.5, and for a minute we'll just put like a 0 in there just to see, and we'll work on the alignment of that text. So let's put it in the middle. See, it's still a bit big, so let's try 0.35. There we go. We'll go ahead and make it scary. Let's make it red. Nice, and you can go ahead and use different fonts if you want. So that's all set up and ready to go. Now, for me and how this game works, I'm going to actually control the timer through my game manager. Because this game's so small, I might as well use my game manager to monitor the time and then to display it on this little text box. But there's nothing wrong with just putting the script right on the text element and controlling the timer that way. It's really up to you. So I'm going to go ahead and rename my text box to timer text. And then we're going to create our game manager. So we're going to go create empty, and we're going to call this game manager. Center that at 0, and it's going to bump it to the top. On my game manager, I'm going to go to my scripts, right click, create C# script. I'm going to call this game manager. You'll see there, because it's got, I think, a keyword of game manager, it recognizes that, and it gives you a special icon. I'm not really sure on the reason. So we'll drag and drop that game manager class, and we'll drop it on our game manager object. And then we'll double click it to open up in Visual Studio. So the first variable we're going to need is a float that measures the game time. And we need to be able to see this in the inspector. So we'll go ahead and put serialized field, private, float, game time. So that's the max time of our game. And then we're going to need to tell it about the text box where we want the timer to show up. So again, let's use a serialized field, and we'll use our Text Mesh Pro, and to do that we need to import a namespace. So we'll go to using. If you're using Text Mesh Pro, then you want to put TM Pro, and back down here we can say Text Mesh Pro UGUI, and this is going to be our time text box. That's it for a minute. We'll leave it there. So now we're going to make use of our update loop. Now we could go ahead and code all the stuff in here like that, or maybe not like that, and that would be fine. But what I like to do is I like to keep my update loop relatively clean so I can see what's going on every frame. So I tend to make methods. So the first thing we want to do every frame of our game is we want to decrease our timer. So we're going to update our game timer by taking our game time, minusing the current time using time.delta time. Geez, that's a lot of times. Anyway, don't worry about that for a second. But what we're going to do is keep our update loop clean by using methods. So we're going to call our first method, which is going to be called update game timer. This doesn't exist yet, so we're going to click on the squiggly little line, hold Control and full stop, and generate the method for updating the game timer. And here's where all our code is going to go. So what will happen is every single frame, the update will run, and it's going to call this method and put us here. So what's the first thing we need to do? Easy peasy. We take our game time. Let's say it's like 60 seconds, and we're going to minus time dot delta time. Nope, time dot delta time. Now we need to do a little bit of conversion on this, so we can make this work for our formatting, because we want to display in minutes and seconds. So we actually need to do a little bit of tweaking to that game time value. Be lazy and type var minutes equals math little f dot floor to int. And all this method does that we're going to be calling is it returns the largest integer, which is smaller or equal to f. And then we're going to pass it our game time divided by 60. This is going to give us the minutes. And then we want the same for seconds almost. So var seconds equals mathf dot floor to int, passing it the game time, but we're going to minus the minutes because we already know what they are. And then we're going to times it by 60. Give us the seconds. Now we need to convert this into a particular format so we can display it how we want. So we can say string game time clock display equals string dot format, and then we pass it some parameters. We want 0 and 2 little dots and then 0, and then we want to do 1 0 0 and then a little squiggly brace again. And then after your little speech mark, put a comma. And this, we're going to send our minutes and our seconds. And go ahead and use a semicolon there to close it off. Now we need to pass that to our time text box on our little 3D model. So we'll say time text box dot text is going to be equal to our game time clock display, and then finish it off with a semicolon. So every frame now when we run, you should see that that is going to affect our timer on our 3D bomb model. Let's have a look at that now. Let's dive out of here a second. We're going to need to wire up a few things. So first of all, on our game manager, we're going to need to tell it our game time. Let's say it's 120 seconds. And we need to also tell it where to write the current time, which is the text object we made earlier. So we can grab our canvas and get our timer text. Bring my game window over here. So I can just hit play and we can see it's working. Go ahead and hit play. And then you can see it's counting down there. You see the game time is counting down in seconds. And we're doing the conversion, which tells you what it is in minutes and seconds. As you can see, it's putting a comma in between our minutes and our seconds. It's because I got it here, that silly comma. So we want to take that out and put a colon there, and then that'll make it display right. Let's run that again quick. So now you can see on our bomb here, counting down, it's displaying the 1 minute 55, 54. All cool, looks correct. So what's next? Well, if you just wanted to see how you can make a cool timer, well, that's kind of it. That's all you really need to do, the calculate the time and then display it in minutes and seconds. But if you've been following along with this escape room set of tutorials, then I can show you, if you want to carry on watching, how we can wire up what we've already made to work as a game. So we can make a little bit of a game loop. We can start and the timer will count down, and then you could enter using the key code. Let's have a look at that now. So I think the first thing we need to do is grab our old key code. Where's mine? So I got my keypad here from the last tutorial. You can use this straight out the box. What we'll do, you click it in your scene, you should have it over there or wherever you placed it. We can drag it over and try and place it. I just scaled mine down because originally it was massive. But all I did was just scale. It's probably the wrong way to do it, but it works. And we'll position this where we think it would be on our object. We've got a panel handy here. Let's go ahead and drop it in there. Eventually, what would be cool is if we were actually able to use buttons, which you just use your finger with in VR to poke. That's stage 2. At the minute, we've just got a nice bit of UI that we can use. So I'm trying to get this key code pad thing on the keypad, like so. It's a bit small, so we'll scale it up. There you go. Keypad 6000 is in place. So if you remember from our tutorial, when we made the keypad, we actually used some events on our keypad controller script, where you're able to set the correct password, and then we gave it some events because we were thinking of the future. So we've got an on correct password event and an on incorrect password event that we can use to our advantage here. At the moment, our game controller doesn't contain any methods for knowing when the game is over or when we've entered the correct code. So we're going to go ahead and create that method in our game manager. Let's go ahead and open up our game manager. Let's turn me off, and we'll go ahead and write that code now. So how do we know when we've entered the correct code and to stop the timer? Let's write that method. It's going to need to be public, so we need to be able to access this method outside of the class. So we say public void bomb deactivated, activated, like so. We can say that we're going to need to do two things, aren't we? We're going to need to stop the timer. We don't want that running anymore once we've deactivated it. And we are also going to need to update our text in the display to say disarmed. Well, let's do that first because it's easy. We already know we've got our text box is called time text box. We want to access the text component and we want to set it to, let's say, disarmed. Ideally, this would be a variable. So we're going to disarm our text. Also going to need to stop the timer because it's all well and good it's saying disarmed, but we actually want it to stop exploding. So we're going to need it to stop calling the update game timer method. So there's a couple of ways we can do that. We can create a bool that gets checked every frame to see whether we are allowed to access the timer. So I think we'll go ahead and do that actually. We're going ahead and use a private bool. So private bool allow timer, and we'll set that, and we won't set that there. At the moment, we'll set it in the start. We'll say allow timer equals true. So as soon as the game starts, start the timer. Then in our update loop, we can say if allow timer is true, then we want to update the game timer. So when we've deactivated the bomb, we don't want it to allow the timer anymore. So we can say allow timer equals false. And by doing that, it's going to come through the update. It's going to see that this is false and it's not going to update the game timer, which is exactly what we want it to do. So let's check that works. What we're going to need to do on our keypad, because we've got our onCorrect password event that we can leverage, go ahead and click the button, drag in our game manager and say, hey, game manager, we have deactivated the bomb, selecting our bomb deactivated method. Go ahead and save that. And if you see here, our correct code is 1, 2, 3, 4. And it'll say correct in this little box. And it should say disarmed in this little box. Let's have a look. Oh, great. I'm all over there. Let's fix that. So I need to grab my XR origin. Took out the teleport point, so I can't even move. And I'm going to drag myself all the way over here. So that should be a good distance. Let's have a look. Yep, here we go. So my keypad's all working like before. When I go over to the UI, I get my UI Ray interactor. And if I enter an incorrect password, it says access denied. So I'm going to go ahead and enter the right one, which is 1, 2, 3, 4, correct, and disarmed. Whew! Okay, so now that we know that that's working, we need to go back into our game timer, or game manager rather, and we're going to need to account for another possibility of the timer, and that is what to do when it reaches 0. We're actually going to do a couple of things. And to begin with, we're going to go to the top of our script and we're going to say using Unity Engine .events. We're going to be utilizing some of those. And we're going to go back down to our update loop and we're going to write a new method now and we're going to call it check time. It doesn't exist yet, so we're going to select the line, control full stop, and generate the method. I like putting the methods in order in which they're called because I'm super weird. And you can see here it needs to go under update game timer, so it flows and makes sense. And get rid of that. And now we're going to need to check the game time. So if the game time is less than or equal to 0, well, we've kind of blown up. So bad. So obviously we've reached 0. There's no point counting anymore. So we can say allow timer equals false. We can also set the text in our text box, which is the time text box. Text. I was going to say hasta la vista, but I can't spell it, so let's just go with goodbye. We can use the event system here to say that the timer is expired for anything that we want to plug in later on. So we can say we're going to create a new Unity event now. So up where we've got our timer components, go ahead and drop a new line. Let's create a new header, and we're going to call this timer events. I'm going to create one timer event, which is public. It's going to be a Unity event, and we're going to call it on timer expire. So once we're back in our check time, we can then call that method for on timer expire. We want to say dot invoke and then brackets. So that's going to call that method, which it's in the inspector. Gives us power later on to plug anything that we need to into that event so we know the game has ended. Okay, that's all looking good. So we've got our check time in here now. But here's the thing. We're currently always going to check what the time is. And we don't want to do that because what will happen is it will come through to check time the first time. Come through to here, see that the time is less than 0. It's going to go great. And it's going to fire that on timer event again, which is good. It's going to come around here again. It's going to check the time. And it's going to fire that event again and again and again. We don't want to be checking this once the timer has reached 0 and the game has ended. We only want to do it once. So for that, I think we can use an enum to keep track of the state of our game. So we're going to go ahead and create a new enum, which we can use to monitor where we are in our game. Are we playing the game? Are we waiting to play the game because we're in a menu? Have we completed the game, or is it end and exploded? So underneath our allow timer, let's go ahead and write the keyword of enum, call it game state, open some brackets, and here we just write what states of our game there will be. So initially the player might be waiting because they're in a menu. They might also be playing the game. They'll be like they've completed it because they found all the clues, they've disarmed the bomb, and there's also an end where the bomb has exploded, I guess. And then we need to make a new instance of this game state. So we can say private game state, and we'll use the small keyword for game state. So this gives us an instance of the game state we can use and control. So let's think about this logically. When we start the game, what game state are we going to be in? Well, we've already activated our timer because we haven't initiated a menu yet or given any instruction to the player. So at the moment, as soon as the game starts, it's playing. So we can write here game state equals game state.playing, and then we can now use this to control whether it needs to check the time. So if the game state is equal to game state.playing, if we're playing the game, we're going to need to check the time. So do that. So then in our check time, we have obviously, if it comes into here and we are indeed at 0 or less, then we are in our, the bomb's exploded, it's a game over. So we need to change our game state to game state equals game state.end. So we changed it there. So then when we come around for the next loop, it goes through the update. It recognizes that game state is not in playing, so it doesn't bother checking the time. And that's also the same for when we've actually deactivated it. We're going to need to change it to completed, so it also doesn't try and check the time. So in our bomb deactivated, so we've entered the correct code, we can say game state equals game state dot completed. So we're just using logic here to control what our timer is doing. So we've deactivated our bomb, we've stopped our timer, and we've changed our game state to completed, so that when it comes around here again, it doesn't try and check the time, which then also fires it. We're always in control of what our game's doing and monitoring its state and setting its state. So when we first run, the state of our game is going to be in playing, which allows everything to be checked. But then if our timer ends, then we're going to be in our end game state. And if the bomb's deactivated, we're in our completed state. And in either of those two cases, the timer doesn't need to be checked, so we don't allow it. So let's jump back to Unity a sec and have a look at what's changed in the inspector. So on our game manager script, still the same as before, but now we've got the timer on timer expire event, which we could tap into. Say we had a particle effect for the explosion, we can drop it into here to play that particle effect as soon as the timer's expired. And you could also have another event where if the player has entered it correctly, you want some things that are dependent on them getting the keypad right, you could control from here. So let's go ahead and test some of this out. Just make sure it's all working as we expect. So we'll go in, and first of all, we're going to go and test our timer. So let's let it reach 0. It should say goodbye and 0 goodbye. Okay, so that's working. That's good. And you can see in the inspector here, the game time has stopped ticking down. So we're no longer checking the time. Perfect. Okay, let's go and do that again. But this time, let's put in the right code. 1, 2, 3, 4. Disarmed. Cool. And the timer is also stopped. So you can see that's working as well. Nice. So let's go ahead and put me back on. So hopefully you can see here now where everything we've done up till this point can actually be used to create a very small escape room game. You saw in the first part of these tutorials how we were creating puzzles, and those puzzles can be used to give you clues that lead to what code you have to put in. So if you remember, we had those color tubes I was putting in the object, and then the drawer would open up. Well, inside that drawer could be a digit, and you could have several of those lying around. We just have to explore the lab to find some numbers that correspond to this key code, so that when you enter the correct key code, the bomb is disarmed. And once the timer, if it reaches 0 and you haven't put in the correct key code, then you've got an event there which you can tap into, which will play the game over. It can either show you a canvas saying game over, you can have a big explosion, all those kind of things. But that's up to your artistic tastes. Well, I really hope you found that tutorial useful and you've learned some new tips or took something away from it which you feel you could use in some of your own games. As before, this project is available on Patreon, so if you want to go there and want to grab the artwork and make your own cool game, it doesn't have to be escape room game. You can do whatever you want in this lab, really. It's quite a cool asset. Or you could just take the project, pull it apart and see how it all works, and use some of it for your own games. The next video will be coming out probably middle of next week, I hope, and we'll be looking at how we can use Unity and how you can set it up for OpenXR, so you don't have to use your Oculus Quests. You can actually use whatever headset you want. So we'll take a look at that next week. Thanks guys, see you later.